Why do you hate Jonathan Hickman? We're live, by the way. Why do you hate Jonathan Hickman so much?
I don't hate him.
Show us on the doll.
There is a sixth dimension beyond that which is known to man. A multiverse as vast as eternity, as timeless as the infinite gems. It is the middle ground between the and the indie publishers, between sci-fi and mysticism, and it lies between the pages of the reader's imagination. At the summit of entertainment, the dimension of comics, where a humble service is held. We call this service the Gospel of Comics.
So let me clarify before we start. I don't hate Jonathan Hickman because unlike someone like Tom King, I believe Jonathan Hickman actually likes comic books and probably likes comic book readers. So that immediately puts him above someone like Tom King.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Gospel of Comics. I am your host, the Church of Failure. And with me, as always, are my contrarian-ass co-hosts, Ayrton McCartney, RuneKnight, and Larry Bernard. How are you guys doing this evening?
We're doing great. We're going to have a great time.
Yeah, Darb
Darb
is the reason this happened to all of you. So he asked me about this book, and I hadn't read 1 through 6 in so long. But I read it again, and I was like, I should make the guys read this. This is pretty good. And then all of you were like, oh, this is such dog shit. This is everything that's wrong with Hickman. And I was like, oh, it's going to be a great show this week.
Well,
okay,
here's the thing. I don't know if it's...
Hold on. Let me clarify my position on this.
Oh, no, we'll get there. Don't jump into it now. I'm just airing my grievances and announcing that I have a new hobby to look out for on Twitter. See, anytime I get stressed out or the slightest bit like just miffed, I'm gonna fire a tweet off to our good friend Ben Shapiro over on Twitter, and just check in on him, see how he's doing. So keep an eye out for those. Me and Ben are gonna get a lot closer over the next few months.
I mean, you saw my response. I would read the other 45 issues of this rather than listen to Ben Shapiro. So hey.
But yeah, so. Keep an eye out for that if you want to participate. But anyway, let me explain what we're actually doing before we get into it. We're reviewing the comic, as you can see in the title here, God is Dead, by Jonathan Hickman, Mike Costa, and who the fuck else ever. I think they had a lot of artists over the course of the series.
Of which most weren't very good.
We'll get into that.
That's negotiable, but later.
Diamorum, I believe, is the credited artist on the first few issues. Hickman only apparently wrote the first 6 issues in completion. So, or not even in completion. Like he and Costa co-wrote the first 6 issues, but he did create the property, and that is one of the reasons that I wanted to give it a shot. So, This drew a little bit of ire in private conversation and preparing for this week's show. So that's pretty much where we are. I'm gonna get the cover image for the first issue queued up here.
Which one? There's 17 different.
The main cover. Jesus. And at least one of every variant cover is just a color change of another variant.
Yeah, that's fair. So, can I lay out my position before we get too far into this?
I think I gotta let Larry have the opening salvo. Honestly.
So the writing is serviceable. The art is serviceable. The problem is the execution, and I'm in favor of the execution of this comic book.
Okay. Like the execution as in make sure it dies a horrible, painful death?
Well, I mean, that's the joke. That's the joke.
Okay. All right. And it's not funny when you have to explain the joke. I'm sorry.
No, it's a classic baseball joke. And also football joke. Basically, any team whose coach has had a winless season, the coach says, I'm in what do you think of your team's execution on the field? I'm in favor of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the problem is there are a lot of seemingly big ideas in this book, like in everything else Hickman writes, but they are only seemingly big ideas. Once you peel back the surface, they're not big ideas. There's
Right.
nothing underneath. It's shallow. It's like that chocolate egg where you have a toy inside, but somebody took the toy outside of this chocolate egg, so it's just an empty chocolate egg.
Or finding out that the prize in your graham crackers is just like a little paper thing with the president's head on it.
Well, no, because that's at least something.
No, that's personal. Like, no, it's not. It's not. I can make my own picture with the president's head on it. I don't want it from you, Cracker Jacks. This is not a prize. This is borderline educational. What are you doing?
So my problem with this story is, it's like, hey, what about postmodernism, you guys? Isn't that a thing? That's basically the comic book. That's basically all 6 issues.
Well,
Instead of doing anything interesting with the concepts.
And I do have a little bit of a thought experiment that I want to run past you guys about this and other stories later on in the episode. But yeah, I want to get a good feel about how everyone felt. So for everyone watching, we only read as an assignment. We only read the first 6 issues. Now I've read beyond those 6 issues, and I kind of dig what they're doing with the concept here. However, as a critical thinker and somebody who can look at something from a third-person perspective, I do step back from this book, and I do see where other people would look at this and go, "Oh God, this is not what I want. Please no." So I think Rune was the next most outspoken, and Ayrton's probably going to have the least amount to say. So I want to save that for like the last opening salvo, because he probably won't be coming back with anything intelligible.
He doesn't sound that drunk.
Yet. I'm airing for time for both of us to get through whatever you're about to say.
Oh, well, I want to call back to something that you said at the very beginning, because it is true and it is important, especially with relation to having reviewed Jupiter's Legacy previously.
Right.
And that is, unlike Jupiter's Legacy, where, based on my reading, we're talking about a comic from people who don't like comics, who don't like comic tropes, who don't like comic mythology, who think that subverting it means taking a giant shit on it, and that's somehow intellectual.
Right.
I will concur. Hickman at least likes the medium of comics. The structure of the story he tells and its pacing as a comic is okay. Unfortunately, and this is the really interesting side of the opinion here, both as a comic reader and someone with education above high school level and a pagan, the story he tells is fucking offensive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I don't mean this in a personal manner, but in the eternal words of Stephen Fry, so fucking what?
You say so fucking what, but here's the thing. Unlike Christopher Hitchens or Stephen Fry, who can take a commentary about the inadequacies of religion and make it an intelligent and even heartfelt argument, as they did at a public forum asking the question of, has the Catholic Church done good for humanity? Right? This is not that. This is a comic book through the slim vein of someone who's read Richard Dawkins, who is a vast, massive, cancerous fuckhole.
Well,
because Richard Dawkins is the kind of person who likes to walk up to people who have religion and say, "Oh my God, you have a cross, you fucking clod!"
we're attributing something that we have no bearing to believe ever influenced this comic book to it, and I want to be fair here.
Hold on. It totally did. One of the quote unquote heroes was Richard Dawkins.
Okay.
You had Richard Dawkins, you had Einstein, you had Stephen Hawking.
Yeah.
I don't know who the chick was supposed to be, and the other character was Hickman himself.
The chick was Hickman's penis, is what the chick was.
I was gonna say Madame Curie, but okay.
But here's the thing of it. All right.
Yeah.
You want to say that religion is contentious, and you want to use the gods as representatives of the cultures that they are derived from. Fine. Okay,
But you need to do that.
yeah. What? Go ahead, Larry.
Go on, but that's another complaint.
Yeah. But that's the thing, though, is that you have to do that with a rounded, complete story and representation. Okay, that is not Thor. That is not Odin. That ain't even Loki. That certainly isn't Vishnu or Rama or any of the Egyptian gods they use. It might be Zeus. Zeus was a renowned fuckface.
And
Okay, but
Quetzalcoatl,
yeah,
that one was pretty spot on.
And
no. Quetzalcoatl is a serpent of wisdom. He is not just the I rip out hearts because I rip out hearts guy. That's not even the correct. But that's not even the correct Mesoamerican deity, and that's part of the problem. Is that the person who made this, who compiled this, didn't do any research, didn't represent the entities that he was actually using or the cultures that birthed them. He didn't have anything good
Well,
to say about Hinduism.
hold on. Let's back it up a step. To say that they did no research, I will strongly say I wholeheartedly disagree with. I think
You
they
can
didn't
disagree
do.
and do wrong
research. Let me finish, Rune. However, I will cede ground that they probably didn't do enough research for you two who actually have some kind of bearing and stock in the material.
They didn't actually read Wikipedia.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at, though, is that these representations are, at best, the poorest quality Hollywood depictions of these things.
What would the story... Now, also, what would, in defense of storytelling, like, this is not supposed to be a factual or, semi-realistic representation of what we would get if those gods actually came back. This is an entertainment medium.
Hold up. Before we go too far down that line, we do want to let Ayrton say his piece, because I have a lot to say on that.
Okay.
Because I don't want to go too far, then we have to go back to Ayrton.
Let's be fair then, and let Joe get the last little bit of his opening salvo out, if you've got any more.
The last little bit here with regards to what you have said is, okay, I mean, that's fine. You want to take a shot at Zeus? There are no, in fact, worshippers of the ancient pantheon left. Not really. You want to take a shot at Odin and Thor? I'm down. You can slap with them as much as you want, because they are, in many ways, and this is as an asa true, they're pop culture commodities. Fine. There are well over 1 million Hindus.
Yeah.
Okay. There are hundreds of thousands of them. Mm-hmm. And you take a giant greasy shit on their religion, and that's okay, but you somehow surreptitiously dodge the question of Jesus.
Actually, no.
No. I know they answer it later, but I'm just saying, in these first six issues, just off of what's here, they dodge the entire question of Catholicism.
Well, hold on. Saying Hinduism as a complete religion is a little bit of a misnomer. If you really, really dive deep into Hinduism, it's more similar to Buddhism as like a life philosophy.
No,
God, no. Ayrton, if you say that to Hindus, they'll fucking knife you.
Let me finish. And where the actual religious worship comes into play is through worship of different gods, but the actual uniting force behind Hinduism is more the moral philosophy behind it, not necessarily the spirit of worship. Yes, it is.
You're talking about Rava, though. Rava's the meta deity.
Yeah, and the uniting moral philosophy in Hinduism, that's more of a recent phenomenon in Hinduism.
The issue there is that
whether it's a recent phenomenon or not, that's what modern day Hinduism is.
There's still people who do older moralities in Hinduism.
The thing is, you can't dig into that, because if you try to say, well, it's similar to Buddhism, then you have to explain why is it that Mahatma Gandhi, who was a Western-trained modern man, reimposed the caste system. Okay? Because he didn't want Muslims and Buddhists in his Hindu nation.
I just want to take a moment and point.
It's an underlying moral philosophy, and then the religious aspect is a worship to particular gods depending on what your specific beliefs are.
Real
I'm
quick,
just
I
saying,
just want
That's why
real quick.
Hinduism
Hold on.
Yes, Church. Go ahead.
Real quick, I just want to point out to the audience and anybody watching this on the replay, I have figured out the formula to not having to do anything to run my show. I just
I'm just saying. I'm just saying that particular position, Ayrton, is a huge mess. Not just
No,
for
it's
us
not.
not just for us as casual commentators and lay people. I mean, that is a huge mess for theologians. We are not. That is a debate we are not equipped to handle.
Well, go ahead and finish up your roundabout
that's it.
thoughts on. No, Ayrton, I meant.
Yeah, we're up to Ayrton.
I mean, overall, as far as the actual story goes, the first issue was boring as shit. Issues 2 through 4 were fairly interesting, and then 5 and 6 were just dog shit, and the ending was retarded.
I mean, that's true.
And was just like, I don't know, I'm sick of the goddamn modernist, Gaia spiritualism shit. It's just annoying. Like, oh, I'm gonna shove crystals up my ass and refocus my energy that way. Fuck off. That's basically what I got from the last 2 issues of it.
If it makes you feel better, it's reviled in modern paganism too.
Yeah.
So I want to circle around to your point from earlier, Church, because this was a salient point about, there's a line from the story.
I get a go too, right?
Okay, what? You have to defend these 6 issues, so go ahead. Open your defense.
Oh, I don't have to defend shit to you
defense
people.
calls the Church a failure.
Yeah, I don't have to defend shit to you people. You're all nonsense. But no, what I was gonna say though is to come back to something that Joe said in regards to this being grounded in any kind of mythological truth. I think there's just enough for the filthy casual who kind of understands some of these themes to look at it and go, okay, sure, this is a book about a war between the pantheons of gods. This isn't an accurate retelling of what would happen if the gods came back to Earth.
Well,
and I shudder to think what that story would be, because it would probably be boring as shit.
Well, no. First things first, it's not even accurate mythological truth. It's Saturday morning cartoon supervillain mythical truth.
Yes, but
this is like
I
what
don't
if Cobra
think
Commander was telling the story.
I was going to say, I don't think it sets out to be anything different. At many times, I felt like this was old G.I. Joe with a little bit more blood and guts.
Here's the whole thing. The whole 6 issues was about postmodernism and the deconstruction of gods.
Right.
Literally, not just the literal gods. It
was it was a little bit on the nose when the god that they created from nothing was Mammon.
Right, no. But hold on. It's not just about the deconstruction of the literal gods, but it's also the deconstruction of the media, nation states, the military, etc. So the entire 6 issues is about the deconstruction of religion and gods and getting to the purest aspect of religion and spirituality, which is love. That's how the 6th issue ends the arc of these stories that Jonathan Hickman worked on.
And love is a very big overarching plot line, but I think personally that has more to do with Mike Costa than Jonathan Hickman, in defense of the writer himself.
So in other words, you're saying the only thing good that I found in this wasn't Hickman's idea?
What's
more
is that if you actually look at it, what you've said is both true and fundamentally untrue simultaneously.
Well, I mean, it's postmodernism, so of course it is.
Well, no, not that. It's the idea that love is a big part of the story. It's like it is the end result.
It's a Chekhov's gun. Love is the Chekhov's gun of the story. It progresses the storyline and gives you something to look at.
Right, but the rest of the comic, the whole way through, for those 6 issues, love is not a component.
No.
Everything is hate. Everything is I'm gonna fuck it. Everything
and that's Well, that's why I think that, you know, and this kind of brings me to one of my final points that I'm not quite ready to get into yet because I feel like we have a few more things to hash out, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But first off, I do want to comment a little bit about the things that I didn't necessarily like so much about this book. Now, this book is so inconsistent when it comes to art. Some of the art is absolutely fucking phenomenal, and some of it is phoned in, like, for lack of a better word. And I don't mean that as an insult to the artist, Diamatore or whatever the fuck his name is,
But it kind of is.
I mean, well, it's not an insult, but it's an honest criticism. Like,
Well,
some of this feels like it's deadline art, and some of it feels like he stayed up all night on 3 Adderall and, you know, a fifth of bourbon and finished it out.
Well, even among professionals, you often have this problem where, like, this page, which is just a splash page, which is he could work inordinately, lovingly to make this page great, right? Are not so good at the sequential art, the one piece into one piece into one piece, doing several tiny pictures simultaneously.
Right, giving you a clear idea of what kind of action is going on in between panels.
So I tend to be a little more forgiving on art, as long as it is not truly fucking atrocious. None of this is Marvel current bad.
No, but it's also not house style Marvel good either.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest complaint that I have. Now, the second complaint that I have is I do agree with you guys to a certain point. Larry said in DMs at some point that this had everything bad about Hickman in it. And it does have every Hickman trope that I've seen in all of his works. Is everybody still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
We're actually listening to you for once, Church. Don't ruin it.
So, you know, you've got the, you know, symbolism that Hickman likes to use just right there in the covers. Like, if you look, the main covers are all by Hickman. So, you've got the idea of the symbolism in the first issue, or first couple of issues, actually. You've got coordinate little boxes. Let me see if I can find one of those. You know what I'm talking about, though, where it just gives you the when and where?
Actually, as Church is looking for the thing he wants to look for, I do want to mention that at the same time, for somebody who, in their storytelling, wants to make the scientists the good guys, I do not, in fact, like how they treat Hawking. Hawking might be a shithead in real life, but he deserves more respect than he gets.
Yeah.
And similarly, this is the weirdest thing to say, because I am not a lefty weirdo, even though I am left-leaning. There is a fucking ableist undercurrent in this book that is disgusting. Just solidly. Be like, oh,
I mean, they do shit all over him. They do later on, like around issue 25 or so. The spoiler alert, by the way, if you're interested in this and want to pursue it, spoiler alert. But in the mid-20s, everyone that's died since the gods came to Earth has been resurrected.
Oh, of course.
And the Stephen Hawking lookalike is back, and the first thing that happens to him is he gets killed.
I was gonna say, is he still in the fucking chair?
Absolutely, still in the chair. People still can't stand him because they have to wait like 20 minutes for him to say anything.
which is fucking awful.
It is, but it's hilarious.
It really is.
It's funny, though.
I'm not going to deny that it's not funny. But when you're...
I understand the...
Man, unless your thesis is to outline how people are fucking awful all the time in all ways, it has like a dead baby humor element that is also not funny.
Right. No, I get that. I'll give you that.
It's like that recurrent joke from Family Guy where everyone vomits. It was funny the first time, but like the third time they do the vomit joke, it's not funny anymore.
But yeah, this has the time jump trope that Hickman likes to use. This has, you know, a lot of the symbolism that Hickman likes to use. It has multiple story arcs ongoing at one time that Hickman likes to use. Like, he can't just tell a story. I'll give you that just outright. Like, Hickman writes something and it's just like, okay, well, here are the 4 stories that are going to be happening in my story. We just wanted the one.
See, this could have been a good story Bible for somebody else to write a story from.
I think that you're half right. I think that this was too many chefs in the kitchen. I think that this was an occurrence of too many people working on the book simultaneously and too many ideas getting thrown around and sticking. You know, because even overdone pasta will stick to the wall, right?
Well, I think this brings us to my opinion that I gave in our 1v1 conversation about this, which is that if we are forgiving to the creators because they're creators, we have to take a minute to recognize and give thanks, give praise to Avatar Press for being a place where creators can shit into existence.
Well,
Just because Avatar Press is an awful publisher. I understand that it's creator owned and creator driven and creators create, but it's like it's also an unverifiable or undeniable proof of point where it's like, yeah, and this is why creators need at least a measure of overhead or restraint is a good idea. Because if you just let them do whatever the fuck they want, you get this and Necronomicon and Crossed. How many awful books has Avatar Press given us in the world? And because they are an adults-only imprint that is only for comics nerds, no one has ever heard about how awful it is.
You know, I'm reminded of a popular YouTube video that circulates around where a writer from Star Trek The Next Generation talks about the time he pitched a goofy Q story to Gene Roddenberry. Gene Roddenberry said, yes, but what's it about? He said, well, it's Q, and there's shenanigans. He says, well, no, what's it about? So, like, if Q loses his godhood and his powers, and he has to find his humanity and his compassion and his humility, then the story's about something. At its core, this isn't really about anything, for a lot of reasons. One of those being, there aren't really characters in this movie. It's like a war movie where they snapshot on a whole bunch of people. And there's not enough time for any of the characters to really brew in the story.
I was gonna bring that up later on in the book. It's not something you realize in the first couple of issues because you're following this collective group of rebels, right? But as you get beyond the first 6 issues, it becomes clearer and clearer that this is very Game of Thronesy. Like, you're not going to follow the same person for any length of time whatsoever.
Right. But the thing is, Game of Thrones,
you're not going to circle back to him either.
Well, no. Here's the thing about that. Number one, I also dislike Game of Thrones. But number two, Game of Thrones takes enough time to stew that character, to get the flavors of that character into the story. And that character's actions drive the story.
I mean, let's just use an example here because you actually have tapped one unknowingly, Church. I like the character of the general. He's a fuckface, but I was really for just a second kind of tickled when it's like he throws open the door to talk to Mr. President, and the president has blown his own brains out, and he's like, "Oh, thank God! Now I don't have to do it." It's like, wait, what? And he's like, "Okay,
I did enjoy
Billy."
that bit.
It's like, "Okay, Billy, I'm now the government. Get me those launch codes." It's like, wait a minute. Wait, this is actually what would happen, you know? And for just a second there, I was like, oh, so, like, is there going to be, like, are we going to see the God of America get spawned because enough military might will cohesive in one place that we spawn a new deity and then the entire God War gets shaken on its head? And it's like, no, any of those creative ideas just went out the fucking window because we're just going to instead show people murdering each other and being douchebags.
And also, that idea was one that Neil Gaiman had years before, but still would have been a good idea within the context of this story.
You know, actually, because I got on the record to talk shit about Neil Gaiman, but I will say this as someone who read the book, and didn't care for it. This is American Gods with none of the literary quality.
Yeah. So let's talk first about the art of the gods.
Well, first off, before we get into the art of the gods, I want to go around the horn real quick. We all know that I'm a Hickman fanboy. That's not even debatable.
I didn't, but carry on.
Yeah, Secret Wars 2015, that was all him. The Fantastic Four and Avengers run that preceded those was all him.
I mean,
East of West was him.
If you could maybe I'd understand, Church, if you could explain to me how this leads into Secret Wars.
Well, this leads into Secret War. I actually will. Before this podcast is over, I will have explained how this leads into Secret Wars, Rune. You don't even fucking worry about it, buddy. I got you. I've already got this down.
Does it relate to fish peanuts?
I'm not even gonna tie this just into Secret Wars. I'm gonna fucking tie it into Alex Ross too. I haven't mentioned that name in a while, have I?
Well, I've got to say again, does it relate to fish peanuts? Does it lead to Alan Moore and Necronomicon?
There's actually fish peanuts beyond issue 15 in this particular book.
There you go. We got your fish stick for you.
But anyway, I want to go around the horn and have anybody besides Ayrton. I know you've read East of West and you liked it, right?
Yes, I did like East of West quite a bit, actually.
Okay. What about you, Rune, Larry? Have either one of you?
I'm boring.
I've read Hickman's Fantastic Four, a couple of issues, didn't like it. I read his Avengers, absolutely hated it. I hated what they did with Starbrand. I hated the Secret War, although it had elements that were interesting sporadically.
Well, everybody say goodbye to Larry. He will no longer be welcome on this channel. He has said the magic words that get you really fired. I'm just kidding.
Let me dig in here. Okay, so Kirkman's bibliography. Let's see. What things have I read?
Hickman, not Kirkman.
What?
Kirkman's a better writer.
Shut the fuck up, Larry.
Yeah. So,
fuck you, Larry. Just because he's been on TV doesn't make it better, Larry.
on TV with two shows.
Wait,
a live action and an animated Larry, I know. Sorry, go ahead.
I've got to find the right guy because I want. Okay, Jonathan Hickman. That's who
Jonathan Hickman. Yes.
Jonathan Hickman. Okay. Bibliography. Let's see. What has he read? Or what has he made that I have read? No. I'm just gonna skip all the things I haven't read. So I've read nothing he did from Image. I did read Legion of Monsters Satana, but the thing is, I don't remember anything about it. Didn't read Secret Warriors. Didn't read his Fantastic Four. Wait, no, I did because I read Dark Reign. And you know what? It was utterly forgettable. Dark Reign was a boring event.
Larry mentioned earlier in DMs that he thought Hickman was a forgettable writer too. And I think that his X-Men does prove that he is capable of it, but there is a certain audience that does like Hickman's writing.
He did AVX. I hated AVX.
Yeah. Also, I read Secret Warriors. I didn't care for that. And Secret Invasion. I also didn't care for that either.
Jesus Christ! It's like, no, this guy is everything I actively. Oh God, he did Empire. I actively avoided so much of his shit. No wonder I don't know who this guy is.
Church, we're gonna have to find a couple of more co-hosts after this episode.
I'm just gonna change my name and change my entire brand. This is gonna be a food channel next week. What are you talking about?
Cool. I like food. I can talk about food.
I'm not gonna have any of you motherfuckers on here. I'm gonna get a couple of French and German bitches on here to cook eggs with. It's Cleveland that makes Patreon money, Joe. I figured it out.
I thought you wanted to talk about food, not about titties and.
We're not going to talk about them. We're not going to talk about them. We're just going to put them on the screen. That's what makes the revenue.
Okay, yeah. So what you need is a pair of German dominatrixes making waffles. Got it.
Yeah. And Ayrton with the safe word that he thinks is pineapple, but it's actually Verbenstein.
It's pineapple juice. Thank you very much.
Okay. Anyway, no. I think that actually points out that there's a little bit of a bias here against Hickman's writing because Larry and Rune both think that it's forgettable, that you know he's not a good writer, and that's fine.
That's not what I said. I said his writing is competent. It's it's serviceable.
No, you did. You
not
didn't say
good.
on air, but you did say that he was forgettable in the DM conversation.
Oh no. You can be forgettable and not be bad.
Oh, I would
Here's
never
the
say
thing,
that
the
he was bad.
the attachment of any one person, art or writing, is insufficient to prevent me, a consumer, from reading a comic book. If you hand me a Jonathan Hickman and say, read this, it's really great, I will at least give it a college shot.
I think the same thing applies to me because I constantly reference something like Kingdom Come, which was Mark Waid, Irredeemable and Incorruptible,
Yeah.
which was Mark Waid. I mean, Mark Waid's a bitch, but he was funny.
Yeah.
Kevin Smith's a bitch, but he was funny.
Oh yeah, he was funny. Not so much anymore.
I mean, Patton Oswalt had a
But-
couple of good moments on King of Queens, but he's a bitch.
It's sad too. I used to think Patton Oswalt was funny. Then I found out how much of a fucking cancer he is to comics.
And he killed his
Uh,
wife, allegedly.
Allegedly.
That being said, have you seen the ad for Nostalgia, the TV show?
No.
Madman already pointed out why that was a shit idea.
Fuck it, you just use his name. Silent Bob is the
Kevin Smith.
showrunner for the Netflix He-Man, which in the lead up to the trailer, there was a lot of negative press because of a
Because it
given
was
art
bait and
direction
switch.
choice. Yeah, and then they turned right around and it's like, hey, here's our trailer. Hey, look, we didn't do that stupid thing you told us not to do. And hey, you can forgive us because we used Bonnie Taylor as our musical theme. And fucking mouth-breathing idiots sucked it up and went, I forgive you for everything, Netflix. It's like, do you people not realize you're being had at all?
Darb even realized you were getting fired for that, Larry.
But yeah,
Unless Darb
so
wanted Larry's job. Unless it was
So-
a secret plan.
so you see, here's the thing: is that compared to a lot of people in comics, Jonathan Hickman is in the top third, but that's just because of the real decline in the quality of writing in comics.
Well, that kind of brings me to my grandmaster point. This is a segment where
Your
I will
final
so-
solution.
no, I didn't say that.
Oh.
Adolf Hitler was a bitch. I could beat him in a fist fight. But
No, we're turning over to Church's segment called Church's Points.
this is a segment where after arguing with Larry and Rune and probably telling Ayrton I hate him at least 3 times, I will tie this
Hey,
book.
I just want to hold on. I just want to point out I was right when I said Joe's going to hate this.
Darb,
Look, should we
Darb
just-
pointed. Darb calling the future here. He's saying this is going to be the Church and Darb show soon. He's right.
Well, look, I think the real question is should we in fact call this segment the sermon and shut the fuck up?
Well, no, you shouldn't shut the fuck up because I'm counting on you jumping in to extend the length of the section.
All right.
We're a little over a half an hour in here.
And we haven't even gotten into the real soup and nuts of this yet.
No, I just feel like it's time. I'm almost out of bourbon, so I need to make my good point before I'm too drunk. But it occurred to me reading this that there are creators out there, artists, writers, producers, co-writers, and they have this thing, right? Stephen King has it in the fact that if I ask you, Joe, Larry, what is Stephen King's story? Like, what is his like creme de la creme? What's his masterpiece? What would he put forward as his
It's the Dark
portfolio?
Tower.
Okay,
It's
right?
clearly the Dark Tower.
Right, yes, absolutely. It's the Dark Tower. And what does he do with everything he writes? He incorporates some little tiny piece of the Dark Tower into it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's how his thing manifests, is he has to tie everything to the Dark Tower in some form or fashion. Okay. Well, Alex Ross has the same thing, but it manifests in a different way. In that every project that he works on where he has some form of creative control turns into, well, what if these characters from X universe were boomers and their kids were running shit now, what would that look like? And that's how you end up with something like Kingdom Come and Earth X, right?
Mhm.
So that's Alex Ross's story. He's going to tell that story with whatever trappings he's handed to tell it with.
Mhm.
So if somebody gave him Rob Liefeld and Todd McFarlane's Image properties to tell a story, it would be a very similar story to Kingdom Come and Earth X.
I mean, I would love to have a Spawn that was painted entirely by Alex Ross. That would be amazing.
That would be fucking phenomenal. But you get what I'm saying here, though, right? Like you can safely say that if he got hold of the Kirkman verse with Invincible, he would have a fucking field day, right? Like Invincible's
Yeah.
kids would be off the fucking chain.
Yeah, no, like I can quibble a little bit with the Stephen King thing, but I'm going with it for your thesis
Right,
here.
you're indulging me. So Hickman
Yeah.
has the same thing, okay? And I want you to level with me. Ayrton's going to back me up on one point. Larry, you're going to back me up on another point. And Rune's going to be astounded because I'm going to be right by the end of this statement. So
I'm going to be impressed. You have written an awful big check there.
well, it's because I'm right that I can write this check. So Hickman has the same thing, okay? And this proves it. Hickman's story is a fucking apocalypse. It's the end of times. That's the story he wants to tell. And unfortunately, at Avatar Press, he was giving whatever slate he wanted to play with. He wasn't confined to the Marvel Universe like he was in Secret Wars 2015, where the multiverse became his toy. And God Emperor Doom became the ruler of it all in the end times of the Marvel Universe. And then Hickman wrote how it got fixed. So it wasn't the same as it was in East of West, where the end times came and the four horsemen were reborn, except it was three horsemen because death killed the others. Okay? Hickman tells the story of the end times, and at this point, he was given entirely too much leeway, which means that I agree with you, Larry, but it's the same fucking story that he tells with every blank check he's written.
I mean,
Okay, I'll agree with you on the premise that I don't know if necessarily all of his stories are that quote end times. But
well, it's not
they're
necessarily
always-
at the same
they're always
stake.
doom and gloom
Huh?
and like
It-
societal.
Oh.
It's not the same stakes, but it's the end times. Because every Jonathan Hickman book is a deconstruction,
Yeah,
and
right.
he does the apocalypse as his mode of deconstruction. So I can get behind that analysis of
Boom!
the
It's
collective
done! I told you Larry was going to agree with me. Bam!
Well, see, okay, I'm gonna transition.
Bow before me, you shits!
So I didn't realize, and Larry will attest to this, that there was more of this story than the 6 issues we read.
That's
And when I
because
thought
it was
just
initially designed as a 6-issue miniseries.
okay, well that
You
makes
see,
sense.
there was way
It got
more story
continued.
than 6 issues in here.
It got continued because it was so well received because Jonathan Hickman's name was attached to it.
Well, that leads into my point perfectly, as a matter of fact. So it was an okay story. If this was 6 issues and I didn't know there was more of that, I would have been like, okay, that I read it. It was a thing. There was some cool stuff in it or whatever. The same exact thing happened with House of X and Powers of X. They were entertaining and interesting enough.
Right, like this is fine, but it needs to stop here.
Yes, until they went past that shit, and now whatever Wolverine, Cyclops, and Jean are a bisexual throuple, and
Well, I mean, they're a trisexual throuple.
whatever. I can't keep track of all these goddamn new sexualities and genders at this point. Fucking whatever the shit. Hickman needs to be constrained to 12 issues at most. If he goes past that, it's shit. If he keeps his story except East of West, I enjoyed all of that pretty much for the most part. And the Fantastic Four run, even though Larry didn't like it. I still thought it was good.
I
For
mean,
the-
I kind of like.
overall, it was good. There were
I
some
liked
dogs
the
that-
idea of the League of Reed Richardses. That was interesting.
The part I
Until
didn't like about the
until the League of Ricks fucked it up, right? Right, Larry?
Well, no, the League of Ricks is stupid for it being Rick and Morty.
No, I understand that,
So-
but the League of Ricks was obviously biting on Jonathan Hickman's League of Richardsons.
well, the
Probably.
worst part about the his Fantastic Four run was that end bit where Reed and his dad are like traveling forward in time, just watching the Thing slowly die. That was so stupid. Like that was so unnecessary, and I think that's part of Hickman's problem is he doesn't know how to just end a story and wrap it up. He has to do a fucking Lord of the Rings ending.
So
and
hold up.
17 issues of ending his goddamn story.
So hold up, Ayrton. You're saying that Hickman needs to write scripts for J.J. Abrams.
No,
Right.
Nobody should write.
Well,
scripts for J.J.
here's the thing, though. Like to drive my point home, I think that Hickman, like most other creators that are given this leeway, I think they're all looking for a perfect vessel to tell their story. And like I said, like Mark Waid has the same thing. Like you could kind of see it. Mark Waid wants to tell the story about when Superman went fucking nuts. And he tried to do that with Spider-Man, and it was interesting, but it wasn't always great, right? Like Doc Ock in Spider-Man's body, it wasn't always good. But when he did it in Irredeemable, it was fucking phenomenal.
I didn't particularly care for Irredeemable.
Really?
Yeah.
Why not?
Ding ding ding, round 2.
Right!
Irredeemable to me was just, oh, this is another bad Superman comic book. Like, if this had come out 10, 15 years...
It wasn't
earlier.
another bad Superman comic book. It was
I
another
mean,
how did the Justice League deal with an evil Superman comic book.
Well, no. It was another evil Superman comic book. And if it had come out 10 or 15 years earlier, I would have liked it a whole lot more. The fruit in his mind stayed on the tree too long.
Yeah, but who did it better, though? Injustice didn't.
I mean, Mr. Majestic from Wildcats.
Never heard of it, so obviously it didn't do it better.
I mean, it was popular back when Wildcats was popular. It's forgettable now.
That's a pretty tiny bar. Like, it's not even low. It's tiny all around. But let's get back on topic.
Yeah.
Talking about God is Dead.
Let's start with the characters first, as one of my first problems. With
Well,
the
we
execution.
were talking about how the gods were drawn before we got
Right. That's what I mean.
Okay.
The characters. I'm starting with how they were drawn.
Okay.
So, all of the pantheons of gods are drawn in the most generic, easily recognizable cartoon fashion.
I don't disagree.
Loki has the Loki helmet from the Thor comic book because
and no
that's
defining characteristics.
Right. None of the gods have defining characteristics, and when there should be gods like Quetzalcoatl that should be very distinct looking, they're not.
Right.
Um,
he just kind of looks like a bird instead of like a serpent, like he should.
Tetzalcoatl also should be very distinctive looking. He's the smoking mirror, but he's not. So, like, they're all drawn. You have a sense of who they are, but it's all super generic. So there's not really a good thought in how the characters are designed.
But
Well,
in
this is,
defense
as I
of
return-
the artist,
sorry.
well, in defense of the artist, if you're okay.
So anyway, in defense of the artist,
yes, if you're drawing this for people who aren't like us, who are more familiar with this, you kind of want to make them as mainstream recognizable as
well,
possible.
the thing is, the with the exception of Zeus, none of them were drawn in a mainstream recognizable way. They're all super generic.
Well,
I mean,
here's the thing.
Thor and
You-
Loki were pretty recognizable. All the Hindu gods.
Loki,
were
in
like,
fact,
hey,
is a direct
the
throwback
Egyptian
to Marvel's
gods.
Loki. It's overt. It's the same guy.
Thor looks like a bad D&D
Testing.
supplement Thor.
Well, yeah, but I mean, again, they're drawing this for an audience that might not necessarily be as familiar with the proper, depiction.
Well, no.
Of these
Here's the thing. You have the hammer. You have him in Asgard. You have Thor. We can hear you.
Okay, good. Yeah, if you didn't catch it, I said Loki is actually a direct visual to Marvel's Loki because the depiction with the horns, even though they added extra horns to try and obscure it, that's purely a Marvel thing. That is not Loki's appearance.
That is
No.
straight
Doesn't
up
have
Jack
a stated
Kirby.
appearance.
That's straight up Jack Kirby.
Yeah.
No, and that's the thing. I do kind of hate that. Like, if you're gonna have Thor and Loki, like, don't do Marvel Thor and Loki. Fuck that.
Well, what I was
I'm
gonna
not saying it's good, and I didn't dislike it. I'm just saying I understand the thought process behind why they designed the gods to look that way.
and what I was gonna say.
And the
But I
fact that
wasn't
they
sure if it could
didn't.
be heard. I thought I was having tech trouble. Is on some level, this is actually that postmodern thing that Larry's been accusing this book of having, where gods are just superheroes and superheroes are just quote postmodern gods. So they rather than represent any kind of ethnic or indigenous specificity, it just serves to replicate. It's a superhero, right? When they're not.
So let's take a look at Ares, for example. Ares is the Greek god of war. There have been thousands of different depictions of Ares. All you need to do is draw somebody in a vaguely Greek-looking costume with the sword, being big and buff and warrior-like.
Right.
But instead, they draw
The
Ares
helmet.
in
The helmet's kind of important.
No, the helmet's actually not important.
There's literally an artifact in several supernatural series called the Helmet of Ares.
Right, but that's not an actual thing. All you need is a badass Greek-looking warrior, and you have Ares. So the image they drew of Ares was super duper boring, and that shouldn't be Ares. Thor was very generic Viking guy. When all you need is somebody with a hammer who's hanging around Odin, you'll know he's Thor. So you could do something more creative and interesting.
Oh.
Like, you could do redheaded Thor, because everybody's used to blonde-headed Thor. Redheaded Thor is in the mythology. That's relatively well known. That's relatively well known. So you could have had redheaded Thor. That could have been interesting.
Well, was it well known at the time though when this came out?
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's been a commonality for decades.
Well, yes, I know that's an actual thing,
Basically,
but
that was the thing that comic books.
No, it's a
So
thing
Thor-
that has been known in comic book circles expressly because people started getting into like, well, does Thor really sound like he speaks Elizabethan? Because that's going all the way back to Into Mystery. These people were
Yeah.
like, Thor is a blonde who sounds like Shakespeare. It's like, well, not really.
Yeah.
In matter of point, the most expensive and popular movie ever made in Denmark is an animated feature about Thor and Loki that has a redheaded Thor. It is wildly famous. I think it's as old as I am. I think it's from '82.
I don't know. I think the best, mainstream, if you will, depiction of Thor is from Kung Fury. Honestly,
Yeah, but that's not Thor. That's Odin.
no, that's Thor.
That's
But-
Odin, man.
No, it's Thor.
I've
But
seen
let
the
me.
movie.
I've got to side with Rune here. It's Odin.
Yeah.
It's
But
what? No, it's most definitely Thor.
Thor
Well,
does
let me
not
go-
have one eye, man.
yeah.
In
That-
Only in Marvel Comics does Thor have one eye. Nowhere in Norse mythology does Thor lose an eye.
Yeah. But let me go one step further. Most people don't have an idea of what the Aztec gods look like.
By Darb.
So why draw them in an extremely generic way?
I just brought up the cast. It is Thor, you fucks.
Then they missed.
You're also trying to defend Kung Fury.
I am defending Kung Fury.
I'm
As
sorry.
you should. As you should. No. He gets points for that. He doesn't get fired this episode.
It is a funny movie.
I saw it. I was like, okay, I've seen it. I now have no need to see it again. The best thing to come out of Kung Fury was the fighting game. Kung Fury has a rhythm brawler. It's on Steam. Check it out.
The Viking Age, that would explain the
We're not sponsored, but we should be.
So there's no thought into the design of the gods, and also to quote the comic itself, gods are just stories. So there's no defining characteristic for gods who are, in a very Joseph Campbellian sense, they're archetypes. So there's no archetype of what each god is, and the archetype of what Zeus as king of the gods is versus Odin as the king of the gods. So they're not fleshed out. So since
Which
we
actually, hold on, I actually like that point, Larry, because that bit where they said that gods are just stories almost felt to me like that was a cop-out for we're kind of doing a shit job at representing these deities.
well, no, it's because they're doing postmodernism. That's the postmodernist philosophy about gods.
Yes, but it also was a convenient excuse.
Which was
in the
also
story.
featured. No, it was also featured very heavily in Earth X because the North pantheon and the Greek pantheon ceased to exist because no one believed in them.
Well, here's the thing that we have to mention that is very, very pertinent here. Okay, is that when we're talking about this book, we're talking about why it's crap or why it is contentious. If you do not feel that it is bad, we have to talk about again Avatar and the personality of what they're doing now that they are freed from certain other restrictions. Right? They made very generic gods. They made very broad arguments about what those gods do. Right?
But not
And
deep.
then
Broad,
and
but not
then
deep.
but then for no reason other than to court the edge, right? When Odin is preparing to have his big sit down and they're getting together all the welcome to Valhalla while we have a chat stuff, right? It's like, okay, and here's all the meat and drink, and we got bitches because clearly there are a bunch of gods who need chicks, and they're all half naked, and then here's our wait a minute.
Rude.
And then here's our corner of unspeakable implicit sodomy and violence because all these other guys are only defined by being queers and murderers. And it's like, that is awful.
But, Rune, real quick, do you not also hate that every depiction of Valhalla in modern day media is entirely wrong and completely dog shit?
No, the best depiction of Valhalla ever is from Billy and Mandy, sir.
Well, I don't remember.
I also like the Valhalla sequence from the Cosmic Ghost Rider, where Frank Castle was in Valhalla. I also enjoyed that.
Look, you can't stop me. I'm still accessing the fountain of infinite root beer.
But so they didn't define the characters, so the conflict between the gods' characters didn't have any stakes in it because we don't know who they are. We don't know why they're fighting other than because they can.
And what I am saying with my aside is that, and when they did take an opportunity to almost define them, they only defined them in the most negative, base, and venal way. Right? These characters that are the sum of stories do not have personalities. They don't even have broad archetypes. They just have the mechanical attributes of power.
Boy, those Greeks sure love their orgies.
Yeah, exactly. You know, as a for instance, I mean, Anubis is married. Anubis got a wife. But here we have this picture of Anubis just straight up ganking a dude for no reason because he's ganking him. And then he's killed less than 2 pages later. You know, they infer a couple of times that different deities are having some kind of interaction, but you don't see it. They don't actually do devote enough time to the Game of Thrones to have the Game of Thrones here.
Also, there's a sequence where Zeus, Aphrodite, and Ares, which is a terrible trinity to be there with Zeus, but that's what we have, are caught in Olympus as the Norse gods are raining hell and damnation on them. The problem is that actually happened in Greek mythology, and those weren't the other gods who are with Zeus. So you've made that artistic choice to do something different.
Well,
Why?
well,
That needs
and
to be built
again-
into the story.
and again, at that point, it'd be to be glib, more or less. The Greek gods make the argument that
You are
the
being
Norse
glib,
gods
sir.
were derived by thieves and rapists, right?
Mhm.
And no mention is made of the Vanir. No mention of the agricultural deities. No mention of the positive aspects of those divinities. It's just, oh yeah, you're a bunch of fucking pirates and murderers because that's what Vikings do, man.
Or
Yeah.
the fact that Odin is a god of wisdom and knowledge, and
Well, because see, here's the thing. Sometimes they're almost right. If you want to say, well, Odin's a necromancer and a thief, he is 100% those things. He
And
is
proud
not,
of them.
and yeah, but he's also just not only those things.
And Zeus started off his life as a shepherd before he became a king. And they have the scene in the opening where he has the Pope's staff, which is supposed to represent the shepherd, but they don't have him holding it like a shepherd would hold it.
I'm gonna take us on a segue here because I think it's relevant. Do you guys ever watch Extra Credits? Familiar with this
No.
show?
no.
It's some geekery about video games. It doesn't really matter, but they have a side project called Extra Mythology, where they give a sort of 101 introduction to basic mythology. Okay, cool. People like stories. I like learning about mythology. This should be fun. And they decided to do Gilgamesh, right?
Yeah, that was not a good time.
If you've never read Gilgamesh, it's actually quite short because there's not enough of it remaining to be a full-scale epic. It's not a very long read, right? Gilgamesh is a story about a king who becomes overwrought with ennui and is a violent dictator. And so the people pray out to the gods to do something about it. The gods basically give Gilgamesh a friend, right? And Gilgamesh and his friends fight, and then they become bros, and then they go on adventures together, and then the friend dies. And Gilgamesh is struck with sorrow because he knows he will never again have a friend. These are universal themes that everyone can understand and empathize with.
Also,
But-
importantly, a chick tries to get between him and his bro, and he says, "Nah, man, bros before hoes."
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah, no, it's true. But here's the thing. When they did that story, they didn't present it with respect or nobility or dignity or any of the things that you could to make you feel the epicness or recognize that this is a culture hero, right? Ancient Persia might not exist, but this is the very essence of what it is to be Sumerian. These are what they thought the ideal person was, right? Wise and powerful and capable and fights for his people, right? But like, okay, so like Gilgamesh is a dude, bruh, and like he's just gonna do whatever, and like this wild man, he's my dude, and we're a couple of chads, and it's fucking awful.
I mean,
Yeah,
Because it
extra credit is not a YouTube channel I would recommend for anything related to mythology.
But the reason I bring it up is that it is that same checkout aisle mythology you see on display here, where it's like, look, I'm gonna give you an image of this deity that is not representative of this deity, nor am I encouraging you to dig any deeper because I'm just gonna tell you a story, and that is the dodge I use to deflect criticism away from my terrible fucking story. My story's half-assed, and I'm gonna use the carcass of this entity to make it work.
Now, I'm gonna send you. Oh, that's not the one I wanted. Anyway, but yeah, so that's my problem is, so since we're using the death of the old gods to also be a critical frame on the death of the new gods, like the American military, the media, the state, if you don't develop the old gods that you're using as a critique for the new gods, then again, your critique of the new gods doesn't work. And then you're achieving after the death of the classical gods and the gods of the modern state world die, then you're not really going to be able to say anything about the postmodern gods that you end the 6-issue run with. So because they didn't do the foundation, the whole building collapses.
I mean, oddly
You're
enough,
not
this
wrong.
brings us back to. I mean, oddly enough, this just brings us back to how we got such a near miss with Thor, and Kenneth Branagh is a saint, and we should be thankful he's still alive. Even if you didn't like the first Thor movie, okay, you have to recognize that Kenneth Branagh saved us from the Thor movie they were gonna make, where the first director said that he wanted to do a story about how an Old Testament god becomes a New Testament god, okay, and that implicit, unwanted, undesirable Christianization, because that shit always works when we do a Superman movie, right?
And
It's like,
we need to have another show where we talk about the very complex nature of Loki in Norse mythology. Because
no, we don't.
Why not?
it is fun. It is fun. There's a
really
lot of good stuff.
I am actively avoiding it. First, because I actually want to go see the Loki.
No, I'm not
TV
talking.
show to see
I'm
how
not talking
horrible it
about.
is
I'm not
before I-
talking about the Loki TV show. I'm talking
But-
about actual Loki.
But in general, no. I just write off that modern Loki's a mess. We're not going to see the classic good Loki stories anymore because Loki can't be a villain.
No, I'm not
And-
talking about
and
Loki,
it-
the comic book character. I'm
and
talking about Loki,
it-
the mythological
doesn't-
figure.
And it doesn't relate at all to Loki, the mythological figure. I mean, I've been staying out of conversations where people keep trying to say that Loki was never a bad guy and that his actions at the end of the Ragnarok cycle are out of character. And it's like, no, they're not out of character, you dumb fuck. He was preordained. He didn't have a choice.
And also, the whole point of the Ragnarok cycle is that world was decadent and wrong, and it needed to end. And Loki
Right,
was
and-
the agent that ended that wrong cycle, so
Right. But you've
Jesus
got
could come.
Right, but you've got people saying, "Oh, well, it was translated by Christians, so obviously they changed it up." It's like, no, they didn't. They didn't. They didn't change it. That's actually how it's supposed to be, man.
But let me just get back to the comic in question. So that my problem is we don't set the characters correctly. So since we don't set the characters correctly, we don't have any stakes for their conflict. We don't know their motivations for their conflict. So the themes don't work because the themes are about the gods of modernity and the classical gods fading to the postmodern gods that are the product of science and reason, which is actually the gods of modernity, but whatever.
Can we point out that the gods of science and reason in this comic are both unreasonable, undivine, and undefined?
Well, I mean, they are postmodern gods, so of course they are.
Yeah. I'm just saying, it's like they only made 3 of them out of 3 assholes, and of the 3 of them, or is it 4? They made very few of them.
It's 3.
Of them, all but,
Right.
and of the 3, all but the woman, of course, gets ganked, so that we can have red skin satyr waifu lead us into the future.
And because
Also,
Dinah.
Also, why not
Support Elon
make?
Musk, you fucks.
Also, why not make? Give it to Stephen Hawking. Why did Stephen Hawking not get turned into a god?
Oh, because he's a cripple, and fuck cripples, clearly.
How dare you?
But
I would never fuck a cripple. That's too much fun.
But so, do you have anything in particular you want to go address with the characters and the characterization problem, Rune?
no, I think we actually probably covered most of it. I do a unrelated funny story though, because I had to disappear on you guys for a second. Mom says hi. She's doing fine.
Hello, Mama. Run.
But I gotta tell you this, Church. So my mom got a book the other day. She likes to spend about $20 a month to buy a book, and she bought it, and she's like, this looks weird. And she opens up, and she goes, this isn't a book. And I'm like, what'd you do, Mom? I was like, I got this Doc Savage, and she shows me the cover, and I'm like,
Doc
Wow,
Savage is a king.
wait a minute. I'm like, Mom, that's a comic book. She's like, but it didn't say it was a comic book on the side. It's like, that says Dynamite Comics on the front of it, Ma. That's a comic book. It's like, but it said it was a collected omnibus. It's like, yeah, this is a run. This is an 8-issue run of Doc Savage. I've read this.
Right.
So she gave it to me. So I now have the Dynamite Comics run of Doc Savage in an omnibus.
I mean, I would say I'm sorry, but Doc Savage.
No,
is
it's
okay.
fine. It's
No, I mean that
it's,
sounds like a good time.
It's more just my poor mother's trying to get, novelized Doc Savage and ended up with a comic book she was not looking for. It's okay. I will
sometimes
help her
comics
out.
are better than novels. Okay.
Really, the answer is my mom's got to get with the program and start reading comics.
Correct.
But
Yes, can we get Mama Rune on the show to review Doc Savage?
so
Correct.
I want to start off with the first major problem I had with the opening of the first issue. Zeus went to St. Peter's Basilica, which is not the church in Rome he would go to.
What? I mean, just offhand question: why the fuck would he go to Rome and not Greece?
I mean,
I was confused about that too.
I mean, number one, we could play the Greek gods or the Roman gods. They're actually not. But we could play that game.
Sure,
we could play that game. Also, we could say it's the last place he had, mythic significance. Okay, sure. We can play along with that, but there was a central temple to the Roman faith that was converted into a church, and it was in St. Peter's Basilica. It's the Parthenon in Rome. They have a ginormous temple that the Catholics converted. They melted all the gods. They made some beautiful pillars in the middle of the church. So that would be where Zeus would go in Rome. And it's also famous. It's not as famous as St. Peter's Basilica, but St. Peter's Basilica is only famous because the Pope lives there.
I mean, this is an example of that lack of research, isn't it? Because obviously you use St. Peter's Basilica because it's the most well-known site in Rome, not because it's the right site.
But still, he could have walked into the other church where the Pope would have been as Bishop of Rome, giving a sermon. And wouldn't have that whole this is what you've done with the world that we've given to you? Wouldn't that have been more meaningful if Zeus came into the church during a mass, said that, and he obliterated the Pope in the middle of the church, and then
I would have preferred if the Pope and Zeus had like a 1v1 like Mortal Kombat style, where the Pope has his big ass staff thing and funny hat, and
or I mean, there is the Battle Pope comic book. Let's not forget that.
Well, I would have preferred that. Like, come on.
But
Zeus, that would have been fucking amazing.
But wouldn't that have been a better opening for the comic of Zeus literally walking in, telling the Pope, I'm the captain now, because I've always been the captain.
Look at me, I am the captain now.
And then he drops a lightning bolt on him. That would have been a better story beat. And
anything would have been a better opener. Like I said, the first issue was boring as fuck.
To be entirely honest, that if just using that first couple of pages, I actually thought the story was going to go in an interesting direction before it didn't. Because if the old gods were to return, if you use the setup presented here, and their outrage was not at the lack of worship, but at the waste of the freedom of mankind to do with the world what he will, and they actually were trying to make things better somehow, that would be down. I'd be jelly. That'd be like, oh, interesting. Because the actual idea of the gods return and then our giant shitbags has in fact been done in other books. There's
better
a book,
in other books.
There's a comic I can recall where Christianity is personified and is the new religion, and all the old gods are kind of like, cool, kid, stay over there, chill out, we'll talk to you in a couple 100 years when you're somebody. So he becomes everything that America is. He's basically the American Jesus, running around with assault weapons, blowing up other gods, expressly because the author doesn't like Christendom and has it in for Catholicism.
Hold up, you see, that actually makes me like Jesus. That story beat, that makes me find Jesus interesting.
Well,
I do not like Buddy Jesus, and I don't like Chad Jesus either. I just don't want my Jesus.
That's basically the whole, entire plot of whatever season of the show Supernatural.
There were 15 of those.
I think it's like season 6 or 7.
Well, now Rune has made an enemy of Mrs. Church.
No, Mrs. Church is allowed to like Supernatural. She just can't make me watch it. That's okay. My mom
But-
watched Supernatural for a good long while until they got into the serious divine stuff and was like, "This is really boring."
Mrs. Church's birthday present this year is Supernatural on DVD.
Look, I don't like that my mom likes True Blood either. Okay.
I mean, the first like 3 seasons of Supernatural were really good. Then it got batshit crazy and it was kind of fun for a bit, and then it just got too much.
Look,
So
when your
Ayrton
story
is going to be
about
the
two
one
mon-
exiled.
Look, when your show is about 2 monster hunters dealing with monsters of the week, and then you decide to transform it into a divine narrative for an epic, and you literally have them dealing with God, it removes agency from the story because it's now about predestination and everything has already been decided.
I literally said the first 3 seasons were fun, and then
Right,
it got
no,
weird. It was
I
fun
concur.
and insanity, and then it got kind of dumb.
I
That's what
concur with
literally
you.
just said.
By the way,
I
the
would-
only episode of Supernatural I watched was the Scooby-Doo episode.
Is it animated?
Yeah.
It is.
Is it Scooby Doo?
That's
Yeah.
that's
I
actually
would check
a great
that out.
episode.
I would hate it, but I would check it out.
No,
You would
yeah,
love it, actually. You would
No,
love
do
it,
not.
actually.
I
No,
do
you
not
would
like
hate it.
Scooby Doo.
No,
Well, no,
you
it makes
still
fun of
would.
Scooby-Doo.
Okay,
Get off of
so-
my show, you fucking heathen.
Hey, the best thing that Scooby Doo ever had was Vincent Price. Well,
the best
Vincent
thing
Price and Adam West.
the best thing that Scooby Doo ever had was anonymity because people didn't understand that it was all weed allegory. So fuck you.
No, that is also true. As soon as Scooby Doo became popular, it was fucking ruined. I will grant you.
Yes.
Because when I was a
But-
kid growing up, I didn't care for it, but it also wasn't offensive. Now it's fucking everywhere.
But, like, I would have
They're
rather
making
seen this
they're
comic-
making a fucking Mindy Kaling show and calling it Velma, and it's apparently Velma on
I
another like universe that has never
making
interacted
Indian
with the
Velma.
Mr. No, they're making Indian Velma with Mindy Kaling from The Office.
Well, no, they were saying they were saying Asian, so I didn't know if they had chosen a specific area. I didn't realize it was an
It's the
Indian
bitch from
based
The
out.
Office that was
Velma.
fucking Ryan. Like, for fuck's sake.
Well, no, she's the showrunner. They,
Answer my
She's on the show too.
What is your question, Ayrton? Speak on to me.
Will a 2-story drop kill me?
What?
If I jump out of my window from the 2nd story, will I die?
No,
It
you'll just
depends
break
on how
your
you
fucking
land.
leg.
yeah, it depends
just-
on how you land.
You will 90% just break your leg or your arm and then be frustrated for 3 months or to 6 months while you're laying in bed in the hospital. And we put it on the Scooby Doo marathon to force you to watch it
Yeah.
and walk away with your remote.
And also, you might break some ribs, too.
Yeah.
All right.
So, like, for example, the old gods versus the United States military. Why wasn't that 6 issues of a comic book? That would have
That
been
would be
interesting.
I would
I mean-
have dug that way more.
I mean, can we mention that this is actually a thing that exists? There is a reasonably internet famous documentation, which is an actual internal document that was a thought experiment that the military made. What if the end of days comes and hell actually invades? And it addresses the technological difference questions and the process of the invasion of hell by U.S. military forces. And the answer is that we're in a state of perpetual warfare, and we have actually claimed like suburban out-region hell, and we are in fact making money off of the process because America, fuck yeah.
But yeah, that would have been interesting as a 6-issue comic book. My problem is, in contrast to Ayrton's, I think there were at least 12, maybe 18 issues of good story ideas in here that just couldn't be developed properly in a 6-issue comic. Like, why are the Egyptian gods and the Mesoamerican gods fighting?
That I don't
Whoa,
disagree
whoa,
with.
whoa.
I honestly think.
What's their point of conflict?
Well, I honestly think that if this was broken up into a 12-issue maxi series, it would have been much more fleshed out. But Jonathan Hickman apparently had to bail after 6 issues on the writing duties, so
I will free you from pain, Larry, by telling you the secret of why the Mesoamericans and the Egyptians are fighting. Okay, are you ready? Okay, so the Egyptian gods of the underworld and the Latin American deities of the underworld want the underworld. They want to conquer one another's underrealm.
Mhm.
Okay, and the reason that of all the problems they could choose, this is the one they decided to deal with.
I'm working on conquering this chick's underground. But
Was because Mesoamerica has pyramids and the Egyptians have pyramids, and there can only be one set of pyramids. It was literally a war for whose triangles are better.
Well, hold up. What about the pyramids in China? Are they going to go fight the pyramids in China?
Well, I mean, did you see any Chinese gods? Did Lord
That
Thunder
was-
show up at all? Because let me tell
that
you,
was-
they weren't there.
Actually,
That
yes,
was
they did.
Really?
I did not see the Thunder Twins.
Did you
sir.
not see the fucking dragons?
Those are dragons.
Those are dragons, and they're not even really Chinese dragons the way they were drawn.
That's fair.
Also, that three-headed dragon is Nidhogg.
Yeah, it's the Norse dragon.
Well, they call him Bahamut.
They're wrong.
Yeah, that's totally the wrong name. And also, if they were going for Bahamut, the Sumerian deity, that's also wrong.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
I mean, maybe they were going for Bahamut, the D&D deity, in which case they still got the art wrong, but at least I can understand it.
That's at
Wait,
least
what's-
closer
what's
to on
the dragon?
point.
Was the dragon 3? I thought the dragon was 2-headed.
3. There is a third head.
Oh, was
I mean-
there? I'm gonna have to.
I mean,
Go back
here.
and look.
I mean, now here's a purely history nerd, mythology geek thing. Their Cerberus is wrong.
It is.
The Cerberus has
Yeah.
the Cerberus has 3 heads in their comic because the most popular depiction of Cerberus is a 3-headed dog. However, Cerberus is one of the 100-headed ones, the Centimani, which are beings born of Titans. Cerberus has 100 heads. And they couldn't draw that shit. They didn't want to
Nobody
draw
can.
that shit.
Nobody
Yeah.
can draw that.
Yeah, because the
That's a lot of
actual...
heads.
Well, because the thing is that the Titans, who are not dead, but are instead imprisoned in Gehenna, right, are
You
less...
guys are right. It's just a shit drawing, so one of the heads doesn't really.
The Titans
are
are less... or not
the Tit-
Gehenna.
the Titans come back around issue
Erebus is what you're
15.
thinking.
I should hope. But I was going to say...
Erebus is what you were thinking.
But I was gonna say the Titans are basically conceptual. Physics breaks down around them. Kronos is literally the god of time, and is a Titan, not a deity.
But so that's another issue I had, is the fact that all of the major thematic structural stuff, there should have been more time. Also, the reporter who became a prophet is the sort of narrator of the story
With no explanation.
with no explanation. Why didn't we focus more on the media completely being subsumed by the new gods, and why that by the return of the old gods? Why didn't we talk about that?
Well-
That's interesting.
Well, again, I will absolve you by telling you why this was this way. You see,
Well, actually-
Hickman reads comics, at least in passing. Okay.
That wasn't a Mike
on.
Costa thing. It disappeared after Hickman left the project as writer.
See, I was gonna say, Hickman's read comics, at least in passing, and he's read Dark Knight, where they had the media talking heads as a component of storytelling, and he said, "Ah, that's cool," and then just did the exact same thing, but did it really badly.
I mean, then why don't we do a Greek chorus, since we have, deities from ancient Greece? That would have been something.
No, because that would have actually required reading a book about this, not just a clip notes version from Wikipedia.
Well, no, like this is less information in it than Wikipedia.
But look, Larry, we are talking about a comic that somehow was beaten out by an episode of Star Trek fucking Voyager on successfully replicating Grecian thematics. And
What
that's terrible.
What if I told you that at some point in this comic, in its 50 issues, that Satan cucked Hades and fucked his wife Persephone as a plotline.
Well, that was terrible.
Satan what?
Because number one, Hades' number one character trait is he's the actual good husband of all the major Greek deities.
He is the good husband. He let Satan fuck his wife and watches from outside. That's apparently what a good husband is, according to
I didn't hear
Mike
what
Costa.
Satan did. What did
He
Satan
cucked
do?
Persephone.
No, he cucked Hades and fucked Persephone.
Yeah.
Well, see, again, in the ongoing conversation about why do these dumb things, it's because Satan is a bad guy, but Satan is also easy to depict, easy to characterize, and he was kind of cool in Preacher, so we'll just lift Satan and throw him at this thing, because why not?
Also, let's talk about that for a moment. The use of demons as a transubstantiation for humans to rival the gods. That's a weird. That's a weird thematic thread.
Let's talk about how I left my cigarettes out in my car.
That actually doesn't happen. Satan is the only demon depicted, as far as I've read.
I mean,
except for Baby Mammon.
Yeah,
Right.
Baby Mammon is a demon.
But that was just what would happen if, Americans tried to create their own god.
And the new gods are all demons in appearance.
I mean, does that mean that the goth chick or the fucking cheerleader wearing the crop top turned into Shub Niggeroth, the goat with 1,000 young?
I mean, yes, that's an obvious.
Okay.
And we got to see her titties.
Also, I'm pretty sure I can clip this stream now and have you saying the N-word.
What?
Got him.
Hey, I will stand by my goat with 1,000 young statement.
No. He was making a reference on how that name also contains the name of H.P. Lovecraft's cat.
Except it doesn't. It's not spelled the same.
I know.
By the way, this episode is driving me to drink way more than I have been the last several weeks.
Today's episode of Church of Failure is brought to you
by Ben Shapiro Twitter.
The number 13 and the color purple.
Brought to you by Guinness.
And Ben Shapiro Twitter.
So what do you guys think about the Jonathan Hickman authorial insert main character who gets stabbed by Zeus?
I didn't realize that was supposed to be a self-insert, honestly.
That's literally the first of about 10,000 self-inserts of the entire book, so don't.
Look, let's be clear. You're saying that Hickman made a self-insert to cuck himself.
Okay, well, I just want to point out that I think I started on issue 3 about like 5:30-ish when I got home from work, and I fell asleep about 6 and then finished the rest of the issues about 8 o'clock.
Yeah, I had to reread everything before the show to make sure I would actually remember what was in it.
So,
I fully admit that I run a game before this podcast, and then in the like 2 to 3 hours before podcast, that's when I do all of my preliminary reading so that it is fresh in my mind, because otherwise I will either forget or I will read it and then forget what I had to say about it.
Oh, you're waiting for me? I'm just a professional.
Oh, see, hey. I figured that the silence was just you drinking more.
I mean, I read it the day that it came out, and I made my comments after reading it, and I told Church I'd have to read it again to make sure I remembered it for the show.
See, I'm still waiting for Church to tie this to Secret Wars.
Well,
yeah, you did say you were going to do that before end of episode, sir.
That was kind of covered earlier when I said that all of his stories were the same story.
Yeah.
War 2015 is an apocalypse story told with Marvel trappings.
Also, when did Hickman's writing on this stop? In 2014?
2013.
And what did he write? 2013? And what did he start working on into 2014? Boom.
He had already been working on the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, and Secret Wars 2015 started roundabouts February of 2015. So this was a
Right,
little
but
under
he-
2
he-
years after issue 6.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, he started after issue 6 is when he started, doing the detail work.
Point of interest. Can we just torture the other two and finally review Secret Wars 2015 after two and a half fucking years of this?
So you're saying we need to read the Necronomicon comic and Secret Wars 2015?
No, we don't need to redo Neonomicon because
Well, if you guys are going to make me talk about Loki, then I'm going to have to make you read Secret Wars. So I mean, I think this is a fair trade.
Okay,
Well-
but if we're gonna talk about Secret Wars 2015, we should really read Secret Wars 1 and 2.
Oh, you
I'm
mean
down
the
for
real
that.
Secret Wars? I'll read the original. I've read it before.
Because I liked Secret Wars 1. Secret Wars 2 was a cash grab that had some interesting elements to it.
Secret
And
War
Secret
had
Wars-
nothing to do with Secret Wars. The one
Right,
with
like
Nick
the first-
Fury and Spider-Man.
Yeah, no, I mean Secret Wars, the second Secret Wars, the one where the Beyonder came to New York to hang out with Peter Parker, and other stuff. That one, the second one, it wasn't as good. It was clearly a cash grab.
Forget White Boy Summer. This is going to be Secret Wars Summer over here on the Gospel.
Jerry Curl Summer, bitch.
Well, the question I would have is, how many Secret Wars tie-in books do we have to read?
Well, just obviously for time, we just read the.
We're gonna
actual-
We're gonna read the main stories.
Yeah.
Yes, because early on, I think like our 4th episode of this, we decided to try and do all of what was it, World War Hulk and Planet Hulk,
Yeah.
and it was 240 issues. We got through 6 of them.
Well, see, here's the thing. I want to mention, I'm always talking about books I hate and how awful they are, but let's talk about cool books for a minute. There is a Secret Wars era book for the original Secret War, where the Beyonder goes to the realm of Mephisto and says, I'm a destroy you because leaving you around is unthinkable evil.
Well, no, that's
And,
Secret Wars 2. That's the second Secret Wars.
No. Let me finish because he's not being a superhero in this bit. And Mephisto is like, well, how about this? I will leave this reality if you beat me in a challenge. And Beyonder's like, cool. So what's the scheme? And it's like, we choose champions. The champions fight it out. Whoever wins, right? So the Beyonder chose some antagonist. Mephisto chose Spidey, right? And Spidey had to fight the Jackal's clones of Ben Parker and the Green Goblin. And it was a very well-told story of a Spider-Man conflict that had, unknown to Spider-Man, cosmic ramifications. And Spidey won. And because Spidey won, the Beyonder was like, well, okay, hell gets to exist for another day, I'm outie. And that was it. It was great. It was a good story.
Final 5 minutes. Final thoughts around the horn, guys. God is dead. What do you think?
I'll let Ayrton go first for the final thoughts.
Oh, gee, thanks.
Oi, Mike!
If you're a fan and well-read in various world mythologies and religions, stay away from this book. If you want something that's going to be fairly interesting to you because you've watched the MCU and you want to see Norse gods beat up other gods, peruse it for a few minutes. I don't know. That's all I got for my final thoughts.
All right, Larry.
So my final thoughts, I'm going to end with the words of the great German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderer of all murderers? What was holiest and mightiest of all the world has yet owned is bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe the blood off of us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What festivals of atonement? What sacred game shall we have to invent? Is not the greatness of this deed too great for us? Must we ourselves not become gods simply to appear worthy of it? If he actually built something off of that quote, we would have had a much better time. I mean,
Now-
Church had a great time because he got to hear all three of us shit on a Hickman book, and this makes for great YouTube.
Now, how long?
Shitting on a Hickman book is my fetish.
What was that, Ayrton?
How long have you had that quote pulled up? Because there's no way you have all of that memorized.
I don't have all of that memorized, but I have most of it memorized.
Well,
I had to pull the quote up on Wikipedia so I can make sure I had the parts I didn't have memorized.
All right, Rune, go.
Well, I was just looking at my clock here, and I wanted to mention in my 5 minutes that coming soon will be the next Gospel of Darkness. And if you want to actually deal with a setting that has believable evils in it and real cosmic problems that people have to struggle with almost no equipment and no preparation, then you can come and see Ayrton try to deal with problems one-handed sometime next week.
Talk about a fucking chill. Look at you. Look at you go.
That is quality. That is quality merchandising, there, sir.
I would rather talk about a game that's better than this book. There you go.
Remember, if this video gets, I don't know, 100 likes, we will make a Teespring and we will be selling its relapse time t-shirts.
That's gonna happen regardless of the like. Shut up, Ayrton.
Because
I'm trying to get us more likes on the video, you fuck.
Don't do that. I don't want to be famous. Please no. I always want to be a piece of shit YouTube channels grasping at straws.
Hey,
I mean, a shirt that says it's relapse time, that's going to be popular.
I mean, if we really want to tie into this particular episode, in protest of the book God is Dead, I think Church, you should make shirts called God that say God is.
I am God.
'Cause-
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway,
God
Ayrton,
is on my support.
you know what
God
to do,
is an
buddy.
AA.
Good night, everybody.
Anybody else want to sign off before I hit this button?
I'm just waiting for Ayrton to start playing fucking